The shuttle descended through the atmospheric shield of Axiom Prime Station, and Maya-chan pressed her face against the viewport like a child seeing snow for the first time, which in a way, she was, though this snow was made of stars and distant nebulae that painted the void in colors Earth's sky never showed. She had dreamed of this moment for 3 years, ever since the Galactic Concordance had opened applications for their exchange program. Ever since humanity had been welcomed into the greater community of spacefaring species with cautious optimism and formal diplomatic ceremonies, the station grew larger in the viewport, a massive ring structure that housed 50,000 students from across 200 species, all gathered to learn and share knowledge in what the Concordance called the Great Experiment of Universal Understanding. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she gathered her single bag of belongings, everything she owned that mattered compressed into one standard issue container that still felt too heavy in the shuttle's fractional gravity. The airlock opened with a hiss that made her jump, and she stepped out into a corridor filled with beings that defied every expectation she built from Earth's limited contact with alien species. A creature that looked like flowing water, held in a vaguely humanoid shape, drifted past, nodding what might have been a head in, greeting 3 small beings covered in what appeared to be moss, chittered to each other in a language that sounded like wind through leaves. A towering figure, with 6 legs and crystalline growths covering its shoulders, lumbered by, each footfall silent despite its enormous mass. Maya tried not to stare, tried to remember the cultural sensitivity training she'd received, tried to project confidence she absolutely did not feel. "You must be the human," a melodic voice said from behind her. And Maya turned to find herself facing the most beautiful being she had ever seen. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, but seemed to weigh nothing. Her limbs graceful and elongated, her skin a pale blue that shimmered with an inner light. Her eyes large and dark, and filled with gentle curiosity. "I'm Zilara," the being said, her voice like music, even through the translator device that converted her words to English. "I am assigned as your roommate and cultural guide." "Maya," she managed, extending her hand before remembering that handshakes might not be universal. But Zilara reached out with a 3-fingered hand and grasped hers gently. Touch lasted only a moment before Zilara pulled back, and Maya wondered if she'd done something wrong already. If human skin felt wrong or temperature was off, or "Your gravity must feel strange here," Zilara said kindly, gesturing down the corridor. "The station maintains standard concordance gravity, which I believe is 0.43 of your home world's pull." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to explain that strange was an understatement, that every step felt like she might float away, that her inner ear was screaming confusion at her brain. They walked together through corridors that curved gently upward, past windows that showed the stars and past doorways that opened onto common areas filled with students of species Maya couldn't begin to name. Lara pointed out important locations: the central cafeteria, where food was freely available at all hours; the meditation gardens, where students could experience simulated environments from their homeworlds; the library that contained the collected knowledge of 200 civilizations. "The food storage is never locked?" Maya asked when they passed the cafeteria's open supply area. "Why would it be locked?" Zilara tilted her head in what Maya was learning meant confusion. "Taking more than you need would deprive others." "Then no one would do that." Maya filed that away as another difference between Earth and everywhere else. Another reminder that she came from a world where locks and walls and suspicion were normal. Their shared quarters were modest but comfortable, with 2 sleeping areas separated by a privacy screen, a study space with terminals for both of them, and a small bathroom that Maya was relieved to find was relatively similar to Earth standard. "I hope this is acceptable," Zilara said, her tone worried. "The housing coordinator said they modified it for human requirements. But if anything is wrong, It's perfect, Maya interrupted, then immediately worried she'd been too abrupt. Thank you, really. This is more than I expected. Zilara's expression shifted to what might have been a smile. Though her features were too alien for Maya to be certain over the next few days, Maya met other students in her program. Throg was a Korthan, a massive herbivore species that stood nearly 9 feet tall, with thick gray skin and gentle eyes that seemed perpetually worried despite his size. He was the most nervous being Maya had ever encountered, apologizing constantly for taking up space in doorways. Speaking in a soft rumble that barely carried across a room, Pip was a Luminari, a crystalline being that communicated through patterns of light that the translator rendered as speech. Their thought processes were mathematical and precise, and they found human emotional reasoning both fascinating and completely baffling. The 4 of them formed an unlikely study group, brought together by Dr. Quelix's xenobiology course that required mixed species collaboration. Maya quickly realized she was struggling in ways her new friends weren't. Low gravity made her clumsy. She constantly misjudged distances, knocked things over, moved too quickly, and had to grab furniture to stop herself from bouncing off walls. Station's perfectly controlled environment gave her headaches, no variation in temperature, no weather, no natural light beyond what came through the viewports. Her sleep cycle was wrong. Her appetite was off, and she found herself constantly tired in ways that went beyond simple jet lag or homesickness. Worse was the social anxiety that gripped her whenever she was around other students. Everyone seemed so graceful, so certain, so comfortable in their bodies and their place in the universe. Maya felt like a fraud. Like at any moment someone would realize she didn't belong here. That humanity had been invited out of politeness rather than genuine desire for their participation. She apologized constantly for being late to study sessions, for asking questions that seemed obvious to everyone else, for existing in spaces that felt too refined for someone from her background. Her friends accepted her apologies with kind confusion, clearly not understanding why she felt the need to give them. You are a student, same as us, Throg said once when Maya apologized for needing extra time to complete a reading assignment. There is no shame in learning at your own pace, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was falling behind, that everyone else had received some manual for civilized behavior that Earth had never been sent during orientation week. The students took a tour of the station's science facilities, massive laboratories that made Earth's best universities look like elementary school classrooms. In the zero-gravity physics lab, an accident occurred. A container of experimental material broke free from its magnetic clamp and tumbled toward a bank of sensitive instruments. Maya reacted without thinking. She pushed off from her handhold, crossed 5 meters of open space, and caught the container before it could strike anything valuable. The room went silent. Maya looked down at the container in her hands, at the jagged edges where it had cracked, at the complete absence of protective gloves on her skin around her. Students stared with expressions she couldn't read, but felt certain weren't positive. I'm sorry, she said quickly, offering the container to the instructor. I didn't mean to, I just saw it falling, and your reflexes are remarkable, the instructor said slowly, taking the container with handling equipment. And you are not injured? Maya looked at her hands, at the small scratches that were already stopping their minor bleeding. Oh, this is nothing. Just superficial. The instructor's expression shifted to something that might have been concern or might have been fear. Please be more careful. Student Maya, they said, we would not want you to harm yourself trying to help. Maya nodded and retreated to her position, feeling Zilara's large eyes watching her with new intensity. That night, as she lay in her sleeping pod, Maya heard Zilara speaking quietly in her own language, probably communicating with family or friends back home. She didn't need a translator to recognize the tone. Concern, confusion, maybe worry. Maya pulled her blanket tighter and told herself that things would get better. that she just needed more time to adjust, that eventually she would stop feeling like a clumsy, anxious imposter stumbling through a world too refined for her presence. She was wrong. Of course, things were about to get much more complicated. 3 weeks into the semester, Maya had established a routine that felt almost comfortable. Though comfortable was relative when you spent every waking moment hyper-aware of your own strangeness. She woke early, studied late, and tried desperately not to draw attention to herself in classes where her perspectives seemed to unsettle her professors. The zero-gravity incident had faded from immediate memory, though she sometimes caught Zilara watching her with thoughtful expressions that made Maya's stomach twist with anxiety. Dr. Quelix's in a biology course was both her favorite and most challenging class, covering evolutionary theory across species that had developed under wildly different environmental pressures. Today's lecture focused on extinction events and adaptive radiation, concepts that seemed painfully familiar to Maya but appeared to disturb her classmates. Most species experience one, perhaps two major extinction events in their evolutionary history, Dr. Quelix explained, his multiple eye stalks scanning the assembled students. These events create opportunities for surviving species to diversify and fill ecological niches left vacant. Maya's hand went up before she could stop herself. Yes, student Maya? Dr. Quelix's tone was encouraging, always pleased when students engaged with the material. What about species that experienced more than two extinction events? She asked. How would that affect their evolutionary trajectory? The professor's eye stalks swiveled to focus more intently on her. That would be quite rare, student Maya, as multiple extinction events typically prevent complex life from developing the stability needed for intelligence to emerge. But theoretically, Maya pressed, trying to keep her tone academic rather than personal. If a species did survive multiple events, wouldn't that create intense selective pressure for adaptability and resilience? Theoretically, yes, Dr. Quelix agreed. Though I cannot think of any species in the concordance that experienced more than 3 significant extinction events, can you? The silence that followed felt heavy. Maya realized her mistake too late. She'd revealed something about Earth without meaning to, drawn attention to herself in exactly the way she'd been trying to avoid. Earth experienced 5 major extinction events, she said quietly. The Ordovician, Devonian, Permian, Triassic, and Cretaceous, plus numerous smaller ones. The classroom went very still. 5? Zalara's voice was barely a whisper. How is that possible? How did life persist? It almost didn't, Maya said, remembering the documentaries and textbooks she'd absorbed back home. The Permian event killed about 96% of all marine species, 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. It was the closest Earth came to being completely sterilized. Throck's massive form shifted uncomfortably in his reinforced seat. And your species evolved after this? Millions of years after, yes, Maya nodded. Each extinction created opportunities for new forms of life, new evolutionary experiments. Mammals rose after the dinosaurs fell. Primates emerged. Eventually humans. Dr. Quelix's eye stalks were fully extended now. Everyone focused on Maya with intense interest. Student Maya, would you be willing to present on Earth's evolutionary history? I believe the class would benefit from understanding such an unusual developmental pathway. Maya wanted to refuse, wanted to deflect attention back to the standard curriculum. But Dr. Quelix was looking at her with such genuine academic curiosity that she found herself agreeing that night. She prepared a presentation that tried to make Earth's history sound less horrific than it felt. She failed. The next class period, Maya stood before her peers and walked them through billions of years of catastrophe and recovery. She explained the late heavy bombardment. When asteroids pummeled Earth's surface and boiled its oceans, she described the Great Oxygenation Event, when early photosynthetic organisms poisoned the atmosphere with oxygen and killed most existing life. She covered each extinction event with clinical precision, showing graphs of species loss and recovery times that made her classmates' various appendages twitch with discomfort. Then, she reached human evolution, and the room's atmosphere shifted from academic interest to something closer to horror. Humans are pursuit predators, Maya explained, showing images of human hunters from Earth's history. Our ancestors would identify prey and follow it relentlessly, not trying to catch it immediately, but simply maintaining visual contact and steady pressure. For how long? Pip's light patterns flickered with what the translator rendered as distress. Hours? Sometimes days, Maya said. The prey would run, rest, run again. But we would always be there, walking steadily, our endurance allowing us to continue long after the prey had exhausted itself. The image she showed a human hunter walking calmly while an antelope collapsed in the background made several students flinch visibly. That is not hunting, someone whispered from the back of the room. That is psychological torture, Maya blinked, confused. It's persistence hunting. It's actually very efficient in terms of energy expenditure versus caloric gain. You are describing a nightmare scenario, Zilara said, her musical voice strained. A predator that never stops, that cannot be escaped through speed or hiding, that simply follows until its prey dies of exhaustion. We don't hunt like that anymore, Maya said quickly. We have agriculture. We've been agricultural for thousands of years. This is just evolutionary history. But the damage was done. She could see it in their faces and their body language, in the way they leaned slightly away from her as she continued the presentation. Dr. Quelix thanked her for the informative lecture, but his eye stalks didn't fully extend toward her again after class. Pip approached her with flickering light patterns that seemed hesitant. I researched Earth, they said without preamble. After your comments last week, I wanted to understand your homeworld better. Oh, Maya felt her stomach drop. Knowing what was coming, Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, Pip continued, their lights pulsing in mathematical precision. The gravity is 2.3 times concordance standard. The atmospheric oxygen content is toxic to 60% of known species. The predator density is 40 times the average. Natural disasters occur with regularity that would be catastrophic on most worlds. It's home, Maya said weakly. It scores higher on the danger index than 97% of cataloged worlds. Pip's light stabilized into what might have been curiosity or might have been fear. How did your species develop civilization? Most species from worlds above Class 8 never achieve spaceflight because the environmental pressures prevent the stability needed for technological development. Maya didn't have an answer that wouldn't make things worse. She mumbled something about human adaptability and excused herself, fleeing to the meditation gardens where she could sit in a simulated Earth environment and pretend she was somewhere she belonged. Zilara found her there an hour later, sitting beneath artificial trees that didn't quite capture the wild complexity of real forests. Your friends are worried, her roommate said, settling gracefully onto the grass nearby. We did not mean to make you uncomfortable. I made everyone else uncomfortable, Maya said. I should have been more careful about what I shared. I keep forgetting that normal species don't have evolutionary histories written in catastrophe and violence. Is that how you see it? Zilara asked. As violence? Isn't it? Maya looked at her hands, at the scars from a childhood spent climbing trees and exploring wild places. We evolved to chase prey until it died, to survive conditions that would kill most species, to endure and adapt and overcome. We're predators, Zilara. That's what we are. You're also a student who stays up late, helping Pip repair their crystalline matrix when they are damaged, Zilara said gently. You are a friend who carries Throck's heavy study materials without being asked. You are a person who apologizes for taking up space when you have every right to be here. That doesn't change what I am underneath. Maya said. Zilara was quiet for a long moment. No, I suppose it does not. But perhaps what you are underneath is not the same as what you choose to be. They sat together in silence as artificial sunlight filtered through artificial leaves. And Maya wondered if choice was enough to bridge the gap between worlds. That night, lying in her sleeping pod, Maya overheard Zilara speaking again in her own language. And this time curiosity overcame restraint. She activated her translator and pointed it toward her roommate's partition. Don't know what to think, Zilara was saying. She seems so gentle, so anxious. But today we learn her species are pursuit predators from a world that sounds like something from a nightmare. Simulation. A pause while whoever she was talking to responded. No. I'm not afraid, exactly, Zilara continued. But I am uncertain. What if we have been misunderstanding her this entire time? What if her nervousness is not weakness but restraint? What if she has been holding back, being careful not to hurt us because she knows she could? Maya's breath caught in her throat. I want to be her friend, Zilara said softly. But I do not know if I can trust someone who could break me without effort. Maya turned off the translator and pulled her blanket over her head. Feeling tears, she refused to let fall burning behind her eyes. She had come to Axiom Prime hoping to prove that humans could be part of the galactic community, that they belonged among the stars. The diplomatic summit wasn't supposed to affect the university at all. Just another boring political event happening in Axiom Prime's conference sector while students continued their studies in blissful ignorance of interstellar politics. Maya had spent the morning avoiding her friends, eating breakfast early before anyone else arrived at the cafeteria, attending classes where she sat in the back and volunteered nothing. She had drafted her transfer request 3 times but couldn't bring herself to submit it. Some stubborn part of her refusing to give up, despite knowing she should. The afternoon xenobiology lab was mandatory. A practical session where they would be examining cell samples from various species to understand how different evolutionary pressures created different biological solutions. Dr. Qualix had paired them in their usual study groups, which meant Maya was working with Zilara, Throck, and Pip. Despite the tension that had been building since her presentation, they worked in uncomfortable silence. Zilara carefully maintained distance, Throck too nervous to speak, and Pip's light patterns subdued. Maya was examining a slide when the station's emergency alert system activated. The sound was nothing like Earth's alarms instead of sirens. A melodic tone played that was designed to alert without causing panic. Attention all students and faculty. A calm voice said through the speakers. A security situation has developed in the conference sector. Please proceed to your nearest designated shelter and await further instructions. This is not a drill. The lab erupted in confused chatter as Dr. Qualix's eye stalks extended fully. Scanning the room, remain calm, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his smallest appendage. This laboratory is designated as a shelter space. We will secure the doors and wait for security to give the all clear. Maya's instincts were screaming. Every nerve in her body suddenly alert in ways that felt familiar and foreign at the same time. She moved to the windows that looked out onto the corridor. Scanning for threats she had no rational reason to expect. Student Maya, please step away from the windows, Dr. Qualix called. But Maya barely heard him. She watched students hurrying past, watched faculty members directing confused aliens toward shelter points, watched the organized evacuation that spoke of planning and preparation. Then she saw them, 2 figures moving against the flow of traffic. Not rushing but walking with purpose, wearing armor that didn't match any concordant security force Maya had seen. They were Crash, a species from a mid-level gravity world, their bodies heavy with muscle, their movements efficient, and they were carrying weapons. Get away from the door, Maya said. her voice cutting through the chatter with an authority that made everyone freeze. Now, move to the back of the lab. Behind the heavy equipment. Student Maya, what? Dr. Quellick started. But Maya was already moving. She hit the door controls, engaging the magnetic locks just as the two figures reached the entrance through the transparent aluminum. She could see them clearly now, mercenaries. Based on their equipment and the way they moved with tactical precision, one of them raised a weapon and fired at the lock the door held. But Maya knew it wouldn't last. She turned to find her classmates staring at her in confusion and fear. Zlara's large eyes wide, Throck's massive form trembling, Pip's lights flickering erratically. Maya, what is happening? Zalara whispered. Hostile forces, Maya said, scanning the lab for anything useful. They're breaching the door. We need to prepare defensive positions. Defensive what? Throck's voice cracked. We are students. We do not fight. Security will handle this. Security isn't here, Maya said flatly, watching the door's lock system spark and fail. We are. The door slid open, and the two Kresh mercenaries stepped inside, weapons raised, scanning the room with practiced efficiency. Everyone against the wall, the larger one said, his voice amplified through his helmet. You cooperate. Nobody gets hurt. Maya felt something shift inside her. Something she had been suppressing since arriving at Axiom Prime. Since deciding she needed to be smaller and softer and less than what she was, she stepped forward, placing herself between the mercenaries and her friends. You need to leave, she said, her voice calm, her body language changing in ways she didn't consciously control. Shoulders back, weight balanced, eyes locked on the threats. The larger mercenary laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. The little pink thing wants to play hero. Someone should tell it that humans aren't intimidating. He raised his weapon, pointing it at Maya's chest. What happened next took 12 seconds. Maya moved. She crossed the 6 meters between them before the mercenary's neural pathways could process the movement and adjust his aim. Inside his firing arc, too close for the weapon to be effective, her strike to his throat was precise, targeting the gap between helmet and armor with the full force of Earth's gravity training behind. Eyes dropped, gasping, weapon clattering across the floor. The second mercenary fired, but Maya was already rolling, using lab tables for cover the way her brain seemed to know instinctively, despite never having formal combat training. Some part of her that was all predator instinct had taken over, processing threats and angles and opportunities. With terrifying efficiency, she grabbed a piece of heavy lab equipment, a centrifuge designed for high-gravity samples, and threw it with the strength of someone born to 2.3 times standard gravity. It caught the second mercenary in the chest, staggering him back. Maya followed, closing distance, using his moment of imbalance to sweep his legs and bring him down, a strike to a nerve cluster her anatomy classes had inadvertently taught her about. And he was unconscious. Silence filled the lab. Maya stood over the two unconscious mercenaries, breathing hard but controlled, her hands shaking slightly as adrenaline coursed through her system. She turned to check on her friends and saw their faces. Lara was pressed against the far wall, her elegant features twisted in an expression Maya had never seen before. Raw, primal. Throck had collapsed to his knees, his massive body trembling so violently she could hear his teeth chattering. Pip's crystalline form was dark, all their lights extinguished in what she would later learn was a species-wide panic response. To her Quelix was frozen, every eye stalk extended and locked on Maya with something that looked like horror. Are you okay? Maya asked, taking a step toward them, extending a hand toward Zilara. Her roommate flinched away, a small sound escaping her throat that wasn't quite a scream, but close. Maya's hand dropped. She looked down at herself, at the mercenaries she had disabled with brutal efficiency, at her hands that had moved with precision she didn't know she possessed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to scare you. They were going to hurt you and I couldn't." The door burst open again. This time, with actual Concordance security forces flooding in. Weapons drawn, they took in the scene. Two Kresh mercenaries unconscious on the floor. A human student standing over them. A lab full of terrified aliens pressed against the walls. "Please step away from the hostiles," the security chief said. His weapon trained on Maya, she realized with a sick feeling that they thought she might be a threat to Maya. Raised her hands and stepped back, moving slowly, trying to make herself look harmless, despite having just proven the exact opposite. Security moved in, secured the mercenaries, checked the other students for injuries. Maya stood alone in the center of the lab, hands still raised, while her friends gave statements in shaking voices. "She saved us," she heard Dr. Quellick say. "The hostiles breached the door, and she defended us. With what training?" The security chief asked. "I don't have training," Maya said. "I just reacted." The security chief's expression suggested he didn't believe her. They took statements from everyone, recorded the security footage, treated the mercenaries for their injuries before taking them into custody. Through it all, Maya sat on a lab stool, watching her friends avoid looking at her, watching them instinctively maintain distance when security moved them around the room. When they were finally cleared to leave, Zilara, left without speaking to Hearth, Rock, mumbled something that might have been thanks, but couldn't meet her ice pips. Lights remained dim. Maya walked back to her quarters alone, passing groups of students who had already heard what happened, who whispered and pointed and moved aside to give her wide berth in her room. She sat on her bed and stared at her hands. They looked the same as they always had, small, unremarkable, human, but she had seen what they could do now. What her body could do when instinct overrode restraint. She had seen herself through her friend's eyes, not as the anxious student struggling to fit in, but as the predator she had always been. The transfer request was still on her terminal, waiting for submission. Maya pulled it up and read through it one more time, then she deleted it. If she was going to leave Axiom Prime, it wasn't going to be as someone running away from what she was going to be as someone who had tried her best and simply didn't belong. She would give it one more day. She decided one more chance for her friends to speak to her, to tell her whether the person who had saved them was someone they could still stand to be around. One more chance to see if the gap between predator and prey could ever really be bridged. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight brought only silence and the memory of fear in Zilara's beautiful eyes. Maya didn't sleep that night, just lay in her pod listening to Zilara's breathing from the other side of the partition, wondering if this would be the last night they shared quarters. Morning came with artificial sunlight filtering through the viewport, and Maya forced herself through her normal routine: shower, dress, gather materials for class, moving like an automaton through familiar motions. Lara was already gone when Maya emerged from the bathroom. Cafeteria was worse than she expected. Conversation stopped when she entered. Students from species she'd never even spoken to watched her with expressions ranging from fear to fascination to something that might have been respect but felt more like the way you might respect a dangerous animal. She got her food standard protein synthesis that tasted like nothing and sat alone at a table in the corner. Through the window, she could see news feeds playing on public displays. The footage from the lab had gone viral. She watched herself move across the screen, watched the impossible speed and precision that she hadn't realized she was capable of, watched herself take down 2 armed mercenaries in 12 seconds. The commentary was in languages her translator struggled with, but she caught enough words, Deathworlder, Predator, Dangerous, to understand the narrative being built around her. "Student Maya-chan," a familiar voice said, and she looked up to find Dr. Quellick standing beside her table, all his eye stalks focused on her with that intense academic curiosity she had come to recognize. "Dr. Quellick," she said quietly, "I'm sorry about the lab. I know I should have waited for security. I shouldn't have saved 17 lives, he interrupted gently. Including my own. There is nothing to apologize for. He settled into his seat across from her, his body language open rather than defensive, which was more than she expected. I do have questions. However, he continued, would you be willing to accompany me to my office? There are some things I would like to discuss. Maya nodded. Abandoning her untouched breakfast, his office was cluttered with specimens and data pads, windows looking out onto the stations. Central ring where ships came and went in a constant dance of commerce and diplomacy. Dr. Quelix pulled up a file on his terminal and turned the screen so Maya could see it was Earth's classification in the concordance database. She read through it with growing horror. The gravity rating, the atmospheric composition, the predator density, the catastrophic weather patterns, the extinction frequency, every metric was highlighted in red, indicating danger levels far above what the concordance considered safe for intelligent life development. You didn't know, Dr. Quelix said. And it wasn't a question. We knew Earth was tougher than some worlds, Maya said slowly. But I guess I assumed there would be other planets similar to ours. That we were maybe on the high end of normal, but not, she gestured at the screen, at the classification that put Earth in the top 3% of most dangerous worlds known to the Fa-Nun. Concordance. Most species evolved on gentle worlds, Dr. Quelix explained, his voice kind. Stable climates, abundant resources, few predators. The concordance standard is built around these averages. How many species are from Deathworlds? Maya asked. In the concordance? 12 out of 203, Dr. Quelix said. And none from worlds rated above Class 10 before humanity. Maya felt something crack inside her chest. So I really am a monster compared to everyone else. That is not what I said. Dr. Quelix's eye stalks drew back slightly. You are different, yes, but that difference saved lives yesterday. It also terrified everyone, Maya said. My roommate won't look at me. My friends avoid me. I've become the scary thing that students whisper about in corridors. Fear is not the same as hatred, Dr. Quelix said carefully. And understanding can bridge fear if given the chance. Before Maya could respond, there was a knock at the door. Come in. Dr. Quelix Khaled Solara entered, her movements hesitant, her large eyes finding Maya and then darting away. You asked to see me, Professor? She said. Yes, please sit. Dr. Quelix gestured to another chair. I thought you and student Maya might benefit from a conversation in a neutral space. Solara sat, maintaining as much distance from Maya as the office allowed. Silence stretched uncomfortably until Dr. Quelix cleared his throat. Student Solara, you have been avoiding your roommate. Ah, yes, Solara admitted. Her musical voice strained. May I ask why? Zilara's hands twisted together in her lap. Because I am afraid. Maya flinched but said nothing. Afraid of Maya specifically, or afraid of what she represents? Dr. Quelix asked gently. I don't know, Solara said, tears forming in her large eyes. Both, maybe. She was pretending to be weak. Pretending to be like us. And all along she was. I wasn't pretending, Maya said, the words bursting out before she could stop them. I am weak here. I'm clumsy in your gravity. I can't communicate in half the spectrums you use. I don't understand your social cues. I'm struggling with every single class. Solara looked at her for the first time since entering the office. But you took down 2 Crush mercenaries in seconds, because they were going to hurt you, Maya said, feeling tears burning in her own eyes. Because every instinct I have was screaming at me to protect people I care about. Your what? Zilara asked softly. My pack, Maya whispered. Humans are pack animals. We bond. We protect our pack. It's written into our DNA the same way hunting is. Dr. Qualix made a sound that might have been approval. Student Zilara, what do you know about human evolution? What Maya presented in class, Zilara said. Pursuit predators from a Deathworld, extinction survivors. And what did you learn about human social structures? Zilara was quiet for a moment. I didn't research that part. Dr. Qualix pulled up another file. Humans evolved cooperation and empathy because of their dangerous environment. Not despite it, their pack bonding instincts are among the strongest recorded in any species. They will bond with virtually anything, other humans, other species, even predators on their own world. He showed images of humans with pet dogs that were domesticated wolves, cats that were miniature hunters, even images of humans bonding with wild animals that by all logic should have killed them. They are predators, he continued. But they are also intensely social creatures who value the well-being of their pack above their own survival. Zilara stared at the images. I don't understand. Maya has been afraid since arriving at Axiom Prime, Dr. Qualix said. Not of being hurt, but of hurting others. Every apology, every anxious behavior, every time she held back, she was being careful. Careful of what? Zilara looked at Maya with confusion. Of you, Maya said quietly. Of all of you. This station has low gravity, and I'm used to more than double that. Everyone seems so delicate, so fragile. I was terrified I would break something or someone by accident. She held up her hands. When I caught that equipment in the lab weeks ago, you all looked at me like I'd done something impossible. But on Earth, that would have been basic reflexes. Here I have to constantly monitor my strength, my speed, my movements. That's why you were always apologizing, Zilara said slowly. Not because you thought you were inferior. Both, Maya admitted. I felt inferior academically, socially, culturally. But I also felt like a bull in a crystal shop. One wrong move and I'd shatter everything. Zilara was quiet for a long moment. Her expression shifting through emotions Maya couldn't name yesterday. When those mercenaries came in, she finally said, You put yourself between them and us. Yes. Why? Because you're my pack, Maya said simply. Because the thought of them hurting you made something in my brain just override everything else. That's what I saw in your eyes, Zilara whispered. Not aggression, but protection. I should have waited for security, Maya said. I shouldn't have acted. I scared you, and that was exactly what I was trying not to do this whole time. You saved my life, Zilara countered. Security would not have arrived in time. Those mercenaries would have taken us hostage, or worse. She stood up, crossing the distance between them with her characteristic grace, and reached out to take Maya's hand. Maya froze, afraid to move. Afraid to break this fragile moment. I am still afraid, Zilara said honestly. But I am beginning to understand that what I fear is not you, but my own ignorance of what you are. I'm just a student, Maya said. A student from a scary world who's trying really hard to be good enough to belong here. You belong, Zilara said firmly, and I would like to understand you better. If you will teach me, Dr. Qualix made another approving sound. Perhaps you two should continue this conversation in your own quarters. I have classes to prepare for. They left together, walking side by side through corridors where students still stared and whispered. But this time, Zilara didn't maintain distance. She walked close enough that their shoulders occasionally brushed. A gesture of trust that made Maya's throat tight with emotion. Tell me about Earth, Zilara said as they reached their quarters. Not the scary parts, the beautiful parts. Why would anyone choose to live on such a dangerous world? Maya thought about home, about storms that painted the sky with lightning, about oceans deep enough to hold mysteries, about forests so complex they created their own weather, because it's alive, she said finally, because every S. The semester continued, but the dynamics had shifted in ways both subtle and profound. And Maya found herself navigating a changed social landscape where fear and curiosity existed in uncomfortable balance. Other students avoided her in corridors, gave her wide berth in common areas, spoke in hushed tones when she passed, but her original friend group Zilara, Throck, and Pip made a different choice 3 days after the incident. They appeared at her quarters with what Pip described as re-proposal for mutual educational benefit. "We want to understand," Throck said, his massive form blocking the doorway, though his voice was gentle as always. "We were scared because we didn't know what we were seeing. We still don't know, and ignorance breeds fear. You want to study me?" Maya asked, unsure whether to be offended or relieved. "We want to know you," Zilara corrected. "The real you, not the version that apologizes for existing." So began an exchange that felt like cultural anthropology conducted by all sides. Simultaneously, Maya taught them about Earth, and they taught her about their worlds. In return, she learned that Zilara's homeworld had gravity 1/3 of Earth's, that its most dangerous predator was a small flying creature that occasionally stole fruit from gardens. The concept of apex predators, animals that had no natural enemies, was foreign to Zilara's people, who had evolved in an ecosystem where even the dangerous animals were herbivores, competing for resource. Throck's world was similar, a paradise of endless plains where his people's ancestors had migrated peacefully for millions of years, their greatest evolutionary pressure coming from seasonal changes in food availability rather than predation. "We are boring," Throck admitted with something like embarrassment. "Our history is just eating and moving and eating more. There are no great struggles, no dramatic survival stories." "That sounds peaceful," Maya said honestly. "That sounds like paradise." "It sounds like we never had to become strong," Throck countered. "Like we never had to learn to fight or defend ourselves. And then species like the Kresh came along, and we realized how vulnerable we truly were." Pip's crystalline world was different. Their species evolving from silicon-based life forms that processed information through light and mathematics. They had no concept of predation at all there. Competition was for optimal positioning to absorb solar radiation. Their conflicts resolved through calculated resource sharing that felt more like solving equations than fighting. "Your world's randomness disturbs me," Pip admitted, their lights flickering in complex patterns. "On Earth, predators kill prey not based on logical resource allocation, but on opportunity and instinct. The chaos of it is mathematically offensive. Life is chaotic," Maya said. "That's kind of the point." In return, Maya began teaching them about human survival instincts, trying to explain concepts that felt obvious to her but were alien to them. She taught them situational awareness, the constant scanning of environments for threats and opportunities that humans did unconsciously. "You're always watching the doors," Zalora observed during a study session. "Your eyes track movement, even when you're reading. Everyone doesn't do that?" Maya asked, genuinely surprised. "No," Zilara said gently. "Most species only pay attention to immediate surroundings. The idea of constantly monitoring for threats that may not exist is exhausting. It's not conscious." Maya tried to explain. "My brain just does it automatically. Threat assessment, exit routes, who's around me and what they're doing." Throck shuddered. "That sounds like living in constant fear." "It's not fear," Maya said slowly, trying to find words for instincts she'd never had to articulate. "It's just being ready, being aware. It's how you stay safe. On your world," Pip's lights pulsed. "On ours, being safe means staying in designated areas and following established protocols." The conversations revealed gaps neither side had known existed. Maya learned that most concordant species had minimal conflict resolution skills because conflict was rare disputes. were settled through mediation or simply avoided the concept of controlled aggression. Being able to fight but choosing not to was almost incomprehensible. "You can hurt us at any moment," Zilara said once, "but you choose not to. How do we know you'll keep choosing that?" "Because you're my pack," Maya said. "Because hurting you would hurt me. That's how pack bonding works." She showed them videos from Earth, not of violence, but of human cooperation. Rescue workers running into burning buildings. Strangers forming human chains to save people from floods. Communities rebuilding after disasters. "We're dangerous," she explained. "But we're also intensely protective of things we care about. The same instincts that make us good at fighting make us good at protecting." Slowly, carefully, understanding began to grow. Zilara stopped flinching when Maya moved quickly. Throck learned to recognize the difference between Maya's alert scanning and actual alarm. Pip created mathematical models of human behavior patterns and found them surprisingly predictable once you understood the underlying variables. "You're less chaotic than I thought," Pip admitted. "Your threat responses follow logical patterns. They're just based on different input parameters than ours." 2 months after the incident, the Sovereignty Front, the radical faction that had attacked the summit, issued a statement calling human-alien cooperation an abomination against natural order. They specifically cited Maya's presence at Axiom Prime as evidence that Deathworld species should be quarantined from civilized space. The university's response was immediate and firm, a statement supporting diversity and condemning the Sovereignty Front's xenophobia. But statements didn't stop the second attack. This time, the Sovereignty Front struck directly at the university, targeting the xenobiology department during a mixed species collaboration event. Maya was there with her study group when the alarm sounded. But this time, they weren't surprised. "Hostile forces, 3 corridors away," Maya said, her body already shifting into combat readiness. "What do we do?" Zilara asked, but her voice was steady rather than panicked. "We defend ourselves," Maya said, then paused, looking at her friends. "If you want to, I can lead us to a secured shelter. Or we can help," Throck finished, his massive form straightening with determination Maya hadn't seen before. "You taught us situational awareness, taught us about threat assessment. We are not helpless. I never thought you were helpless," Maya said, "but you thought you had to protect us alone." Pip's lights pulsed. "We are a pack, are we not? Packs protect each other." Maya felt something warm bloom in her chest. Something that felt like hope. "All right," she said. "Throck, your size makes you intimidating, and you're stronger than you think. Use doorways as choke points. They'll have to come to you, Zilara. Your speed and agility. You're our scout. Stay mobile and give us information, Pip. You can blind opponents with concentrated light. Be our tactical support. What about you?" Zilara asked. "I'm the distraction," Maya grinned. "They came here because they think I'm dangerous. Let's use that." They moved through the corridors with coordinated precision that surprised even Maya when they encountered 2 Sovereignty Front soldiers. Throck didn't cower. He positioned himself in a doorway and bellowed a challenge that made the attackers hesitate. That hesitation was all Maya needed to close distance and engage while Pip strobed blinding light patterns and Zilara circled to cut off retreat. The fight was brief and decisive. More importantly, it was collaborative. Security arrived to find 4 students standing over captured attackers, all of them breathing hard, all of them unharmed. The security chief looked at Maya. "You trained them." "I shared what I knew," Maya corrected. "They chose to use it." The incident made galactic news, not as dangerous Deathworlder attacks again, but as mixed species cooperation defeats radical faction. Interviews requested came from across the concordance. Maya declined most of them, but accepted one from a student journalism collective that wanted to understand rather than sensationalize. What do you think this proves? The interviewer asked, a moth-like being whose wings shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. That we're stronger together than apart, Maya said. That different doesn't mean incompatible. That species from gentle worlds aren't weak, and species from harsh worlds aren't monsters. We're just different, and those differences can complement each other, Zilara, sitting beside her, added. Maya taught us that strength isn't just physical. But she also taught us that physical strength isn't something to fear. It's a tool, like any other, that can be used for protection or harm, depending on the wielder's choice. The interview went viral, sparking debates across the concordance about Deathworld integration, species diversity, and the nature of strength. But Maya wasn't paying attention to galactic politics. She was focused on her studies, on her friends, on building the life she'd come to Axiom Prime hoping to find. The semester ended with final exams and presentations for her xenobiology final. Maya collaborated with her study group on a project examining how different evolutionary pressures created different approaches to problem-solving. Demonstrated it practically, presenting the group with a complex puzzle requiring strength, speed, tactical thinking, and mathematical precision. Then they solved it together. Each member